Typical plural family out there has, say, 5 wives, 5 kids each. We're looking at a little more than $13,000 a month per family.
The ex-polygamist sect leader was sentenced yesterday for a food stamp fraud and for escaping house arrest.
I feel like I've been slapped by polygamy.
That sweet Sister Wives family you've been watching for 13 seasons? They're running the most successful con game in America, and you've been paying for it. Right now, as you're watching this, there's a woman collecting welfare as a single mother while her husband sits in the next room with his 3 other wives who are doing the exact same thing. 5 families worth of government benefits flowing into one household, and it's completely legal. The polygamy community has perfected a financial scheme so brilliant that it's bleeding American taxpayers for over $100 million every single year.
There's no documentation with the state. There's no way of saying that this woman is part of a plural marriage.
And nobody talks about it. Not the media, not the politicians, definitely not Kody Brown. I've spent months following the money trail through court documents, tax filings, and federal investigations that the mainstream media won't touch. What I found will make you furious. We're talking about genetic manipulation, international trafficking, and financial schemes so sophisticated they make Wall Street look amateur.
It's easy for polygamous families to get thousands a month, Cosilia says, especially since, in the eyes of the state, women in plural marriages are considered single moms.
The 10 revelations I'm about to share aren't theories or gossip. They're documented facts with paper trails, and by the time we're done, you'll understand why the FBI has been quietly building cases and why the polygamy community is running scared. Starting with the welfare con that's been bleeding your tax dollars dry for decades. Here's how the game works, and it's so simple it's genius. Meet Sarah, a fictional name for a very real woman I'll tell you about. Sarah walks into the Department of Social Services with her 4 children, fills out paperwork claiming she's an unmarried single mother with no income, and walks out with food stamps, Medicaid, WIC benefits, and housing assistance worth roughly $36,000 per year. What Sarah doesn't mention is that she drives home to a compound where her husband David lives with his 4 other spiritual wives, who each pulled the exact same routine at different government offices across 3 counties. 5 women, 22 children total, all collecting benefits as single mothers. Do the math. That's $180,000 in annual government assistance flowing into one household.
Cosilia says the high use of government resources by polygamists is their payback for government intervention.
But here's where it gets truly insidious. David, the husband, isn't technically married to any of these women except the first wife, who divorced him on paper years ago to maximize their benefit eligibility. He's legally single, owns multiple businesses under different names, and pays 0 child support because officially he's not the father of most of these children. The spiritual wives can't report his income because legally they're not married to him. They can't report his child support because he doesn't pay any. They can't report his assets because technically they don't share them. It's the perfect storm of legal loopholes wrapped in religious freedom.
This is when a child is born into one of these plural marriages, father's name unknown, which immediately kicks them up as they go through the benefits program.
Federal investigators estimate this type of scheme could cost American taxpayers over $100 million annually, though exact figures are difficult to verify due to the secretive nature of these arrangements. Former FLDS members have testified that what they call bleeding the beast, referring to accessing government resources, is reportedly encouraged in some polygamous communities. The Brown family from Sister Wives has faced their own financial scrutiny. Public records show Mary Brown filed for bankruptcy in 2005, citing financial hardship. According to various reports and court documents, the family's financial arrangements have raised questions among investigators. When legal pressure mounted in Utah, the family relocated to Nevada, citing concerns about prosecution. This isn't poverty assistance. This is organized financial fraud, hiding behind plural marriage, and every single tax-paying American is funding it, whether they know it or not.
Crazy Armenian gangster involved with crazy polygamist fundamentalist Mormon sect, $500 million scam. And I was just like, wow.
If you think modern polygamy is about spiritual devotion and religious calling, you've been watching too much Sister Wives. The dirty truth is that today's plural marriage has evolved into something the original Mormon pioneers never imagined, a sophisticated business model designed to maximize profit and minimize taxes. Let me introduce you to the real economics of plural marriage. A monogamous man with 4 children pays full tax rates, gets 1 personal exemption for his wife, and qualifies for limited government assistance. A polygamous man with 4 spiritual wives and 20 children pays almost no taxes, claims multiple business deductions, and qualifies his family for hundreds of thousands in government benefits. The math is staggering. Federal tax investigators have documented cases where polygamous families with gross incomes over $200,000 paid less in taxes than minimum wage workers. How? Each wife files separately as head of household, claiming children and earned income tax credits. The husband claims business losses, charitable deductions to the church, and keeps his reportable income artificially low. But the real money isn't in welfare fraud or tax evasion. It's in the empire building that polygamy enables.
Polygamy is illegal in the U.S. The Kingstons over the years have been investigated for tax fraud, child welfare fraud.
Take the fundamentalist Latter-day Saints community in Colorado City, Arizona. For decades, they've operated what amounts to a communist business collective, where all property and businesses are controlled by the church trust, but the profits flow to a select group of polygamous leaders. Warren Jeffs, the imprisoned FLDS leader, controlled assets worth over $100 million before his conviction. His polygamous network included construction companies, ranches, manufacturing businesses, and real estate developments across multiple states. Each wife could own property, start businesses, and access credit lines, multiplying the family's economic power exponentially. The Brown family's financial arrangements, as documented in public records, show a complex web of property ownership and business interests. Court filings and property records indicate they've held interests in various properties across multiple states. Public documents suggest strategic legal decisions, including Kody's divorce from Mary and subsequent marriage to Robin, were made around the time of adoption proceedings for Robin's children from her previous marriage. Modern polygamous communities have essentially created their own economic ecosystem, where religious devotion takes a back seat to financial optimization. The spiritual wives aren't seeking heavenly rewards anymore. They're seeking tax advantages, credit multiplication, and government benefit maximization. When money becomes the primary motivator, the religious facade starts cracking, and what emerges underneath is a financial scheme that would make Bernie Madoff jealous.
There's about 3,000 to 5,000 members, almost all of them in Utah. A really important thing is taking of plural wives. They are the community of the righteous, and the rest of the world is dangerous and sinful and should be kept at arm's length.
Here's the legal magic trick that keeps polygamists out of prison and keeps the money flowing. Polygamy is a felony in all 50 states, punishable by up to 5 years in federal prison and massive fines. So how are tens of thousands of people practicing it openly on reality television? The answer lies in one crucial word: cohabitation. Polygamists don't actually get legally married to multiple spouses anymore. They get legally married once, then enter into spiritual marriages or religious ceremonies that have zero legal standing. In the eyes of the law, they're just unmarried adults living together with their children. This semantic sleight of hand transforms felony polygamy into perfectly legal cohabitation. The husband isn't committing bigamy because he only has one legal marriage certificate. The spiritual wives aren't married women. They're single mothers living with their boyfriend. The children aren't illegitimate. They're just kids with unmarried parents. But here's where the legal gymnastics get truly impressive. Polygamous families have mastered the art of strategic divorce and remarriage to maximize their legal benefits. The Brown family is a perfect example.
There was no reason for them to think that I wasn't going to be fair.
Well, it feels like there was some distrust there that you weren't going to be fair.
Kody was legally married to Mary for over 20 years, then divorced her to legally marry Robin so he could adopt her children from her previous marriage. This wasn't an emotional decision. This was calculated legal maneuvering to access Robin's children's military benefits through their biological father's service record. The divorce allowed Mary to file as a single woman for tax purposes while maintaining her spiritual marriage to Kody. Meanwhile, Robin gained legal wife status, which provided insurance benefits and legal protections the spiritual wives don't get. Law enforcement agencies know exactly what's happening, but their hands are tied by the legal framework. Prosecutors need evidence of actual bigamy, meaning multiple marriage licenses or ceremonies that create legal obligations. Spiritual ceremonies conducted by religious leaders don't count. Living together doesn't count. Having children together doesn't count. The few prosecutions that do happen typically involve other crimes like child abuse, tax evasion, or welfare fraud. Tom Green, a Utah polygamist, was convicted not for polygamy but for child rape and criminal non-support. The polygamy charges were almost an afterthought. Federal investigators have testified that proving polygamy requires demonstrating that the defendant believed his spiritual marriages created legal obligations equivalent to civil marriage. Since most modern polygamists explicitly acknowledge their spiritual marriages have no legal standing, they've created the perfect defense. The legal system designed to protect religious freedom has become the shield that protects organized financial fraud on a massive scale.
When the twin border towns were best known for being under the cult control of polygamous prophet Warren Jeffs and his FLDS church.
Build up your husband by being submissive.
Think polygamy is confined to remote compounds in the Utah desert? Think again. Federal estimates put the number of practicing polygamists in America between 30 and 50,000 people, and they're living in suburban neighborhoods from California to New York, hiding in plain sight. The modern polygamist family looks nothing like the prairie dress stereotype you see on TV. They shop at Target, drive SUVs to soccer practice, and live in middle-class subdivisions where their neighbors have no idea they're part of a plural marriage. The secrecy isn't just about avoiding prosecution anymore, it's about blending into mainstream society while maintaining their alternative lifestyle. Take the case of Michael Travesser's group in New Mexico, discovered only when child abuse allegations surfaced. For years, this polygamous community operated businesses, sent children to public schools, and participated in local community events. Their neighbors described them as quiet, religious families who kept to themselves. Nobody suspected the complex plural marriage network operating behind closed doors. The geographic spread is staggering. While Utah and Arizona remain polygamy central, with an estimated 20,000 practitioners, thriving communities exist in Nevada, Colorado, Texas, Montana, and even suburban areas of California and Florida. Some families have relocated internationally, establishing polygamous colonies in Mexico, Canada, and Central America. The technology revolution has transformed how polygamist families stay connected and avoid detection.
Hundreds of large families torn apart, prominent men exiled, and younger girls married off by Jeffs to his polygamous followers.
Encrypted messaging apps, private social networks, and secure communication platforms allow scattered family members to coordinate finances, share resources, and maintain their plural marriages across vast distances. What used to require isolated compounds now operates through digital networks. But here's what makes modern polygamy truly invisible. These families have mastered the art of compartmentalization. The legal wife lives in the main house with some of the children. Spiritual wife number 2 lives 3 blocks away in her own home with her children. Spiritual wife number 3 might be in the next town over. To outsiders, they look like divorced parents sharing custody or extended family members helping each other out. The children attend regular public schools, participate in sports and activities, and socialize with monogamous families. They're coached never to discuss their family structure outside the home. They learn to refer to their father's other wives as aunts or family friends. They master the double life before they're old enough to question it. Real estate records reveal the sophisticated property arrangements these families use to maintain their cover. Multiple properties purchased under different names, complex trust arrangements, and strategic property transfers create the appearance of separate households while maintaining financial and familial connections. Your children might be playing with polygamous children. Your coworkers might be living plural marriages. Your quiet neighbors who seem to have an unusual number of relatives visiting might be operating something completely different than what you imagine.
Through the paper, we learned that the Lehigh City Police were doing an investigation on our family.
Basically making us nervous. Very, very nervous.
September 27th, 2010. That's the date that changed everything for the polygamy underground. TLC premiered Sister Wives, and Kody Brown made the catastrophic decision that no polygamist had ever made before. He put his family's illegal lifestyle on national television and dared law enforcement to do something about it. Within weeks, the Lehigh Police Department launched a criminal investigation. The Utah Attorney General's office opened files. Federal agencies started asking questions. For the first time in decades, a polygamous family was under active criminal investigation, not for child abuse or welfare fraud, but for the polygamy itself. The polygamist community watched in horror as one family's publicity stunt threatened to bring down the entire underground network. Kody Brown had violated the cardinal rule of modern polygamy: never, ever attract government attention. His decision to go public sent shockwaves through polygamous communities across the country. But here's what the cameras didn't show you. According to public records and investigative reports, the Browns had already attracted attention for various financial matters years before the show aired. Court documents and property records reveal a complex pattern of business dealings and financial arrangements that raised questions among investigators. The investigation reportedly uncovered financial records that painted a different picture than the family narrative. Multiple bankruptcy filings, strategic legal maneuvers, and complex business arrangements created what investigators described as unusual financial patterns for a family of their claimed income level. When Utah prosecutors announced they were considering felony charges, the Browns made their second catastrophic mistake. Instead of quietly negotiating or accepting a plea deal, they hired high-profile attorneys and turned their legal troubles into a media circus. They filed a federal lawsuit challenging Utah's polygamy laws, essentially forcing the government to take a public position on prosecuting polygamous families.
I feel like on some level, in spite of any potential collateral damage, the emotions of the children.
The midnight flight to Nevada in January 2011 wasn't the spontaneous family decision portrayed on television. It was a calculated move to escape Utah's jurisdiction while maintaining their reality show income, but the damage was already done. The investigation had exposed the financial infrastructure that polygamous families use to game the system. Federal agencies started sharing information across state lines for the first time. The IRS began cross-referencing tax filings from plural families. Social services departments started flagging suspicious benefit claims. The Browns had accidentally created a federal task force dedicated to investigating polygamous fraud. Most devastating of all, the Brown family's public platform gave law enforcement something they'd never had before: detailed documentation of how modern polygamous families operate. Every episode provided evidence, every interview revealed tactics, every financial disclosure exposed the system. The polygamy underground's greatest fear had come true. Their secrets were no longer secret, and it was all because one family couldn't resist the spotlight.
A long time ago, I looked up to the heavens and I said to God, "Have you got my back?" And on my 43rd birthday, he said, "Yep, I do."
Behind the financial schemes and legal loopholes are over 100,000 children living in polygamous families across America, and their stories will break your heart. These aren't the happy, well-adjusted kids you see smiling on sister wives. These are children trapped in a system that treats them as commodities, tax deductions, and breeding stock for the next generation. Let's start with the identity crisis that haunts every polygamous child. Imagine growing up never knowing which father figure in your house is actually your biological dad. In many polygamous families, paternity is deliberately obscured to maximize government benefits and minimize child support obligations. Children learn to call multiple men father and multiple women mother, creating psychological confusion that follows them into adulthood. Former polygamous children describe the exhausting mental gymnastics of maintaining two completely different identities. At home, they're part of a large plural family with complex hierarchies and religious obligations. At school, they're coached to lie about their family structure, claim their mothers are single, and never mention their father's other wives. The psychological stress of this constant deception creates anxiety disorders, depression, and trust issues that persist long after they leave the community. The educational neglect is systematic and deliberate. Many polygamous communities operate their own schools or homeschool networks designed to limit children's exposure to outside ideas and career opportunities. Girls are particularly restricted, often pulled from education entirely by age 14 to prepare for marriage and childbearing. Boys face their own limitations, with only a select few chosen for higher education, while the rest are groomed for manual labor within the community. But the most disturbing aspect is the financial exploitation of these children. Each child represents thousands of dollars in annual government benefits, tax credits, and deductions. Former FLDS members have testified that children are viewed as economic assets, with families competing to have the most children to maximize their government assistance. The welfare fraud isn't just stealing from taxpayers, it's stealing these children's futures by trapping them in a system of deliberate poverty and dependence. The medical neglect is equally shocking. Many polygamous children receive minimal health care.
And my mom told me that we're moving. I told her she couldn't make me go, and I wasn't going.
I cried a lot. I just had all of these plans, and they're all down the sink now.
I don't think it's fair.
To avoid creating documentation that might expose their family structure, immunization records are falsified, birth certificates are manipulated, and serious medical conditions go untreated to maintain the family's invisibility. When children do receive medical care, they're coached to lie about their living situation and family composition. The statistics are staggering. Studies of former polygamous community members show rates of depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder that rival combat veterans. Suicide rates among young adults who've left polygamous communities are significantly higher than national averages. Educational achievement levels lag decades behind their mainstream peers. These children didn't choose this life, but they're paying the price for their parents' choices every single day. While adults debate religious freedom and alternative lifestyles, an entire generation is growing up damaged by a system that prioritizes profit over children's well-being. Deep in the medical files of Utah hospitals lies evidence of a genetic catastrophe that polygamous leaders have spent decades trying to hide. The closed gene pools of fundamentalist communities have created a medical nightmare that makes science fiction look tame, and the cover-up reaches the highest levels of polygamous leadership. In Colorado City, Arizona, and Hilldale, Utah, where Warren Jeffs' former FLDS community was concentrated, medical researchers have documented concerning genetic patterns. According to Dr. Theodore Tarby, a pediatric neurologist who has studied these communities, the rate of a rare genetic disorder called fumarase deficiency appears significantly higher than normal populations. Dr. Tarby's published research indicates that fumarase deficiency, which normally occurs in roughly 1 in 4 million births, appears at much higher rates in certain isolated communities. The condition causes severe developmental challenges and physical complications for affected children. Fumarase deficiency causes severe mental retardation, seizures, and physical deformities. Children born with this condition rarely live past their teens, and those who survive require constant medical care. But here's the truly horrifying part. Community leaders know exactly what's causing it, and they're deliberately perpetuating it. The genetic disaster stems from the FLDS practice of marrying within a limited bloodline descended from the community's founders. Medical geneticists have traced the fumarase deficiency gene to a single common ancestor, and decades of intermarriage within this closed population have concentrated the defective genes to catastrophic levels. Dr. Theodore Tarby, a pediatric neurologist who has researched these communities for years, has described the situation as representing significant genetic challenges in isolated populations. His research has documented various rare genetic disorders appearing at rates higher than typically seen in general populations. The medical records paint a picture of systematic genetic negligence. Children born with obvious deformities are hidden from outsiders and denied proper medical care. Families are instructed to avoid mainstream medical facilities and instead rely on community midwives and religious healing. When children do receive hospital treatment, their families provide false information about their ancestry and family medical history, but the genetic problems extend far beyond the FLDS community. Other polygamous groups practicing cousin marriage and limited bloodline breeding are seeing similar patterns emerge. The Kingston clan in Utah has documented cases of children born with severe birth defects, developmental disabilities, and genetic conditions that should be virtually extinct in modern populations. The financial cost of caring for these genetically damaged children falls primarily on government programs that the families are already defrauding. Medicaid pays for the extensive medical care, special education services, and lifetime support these children require, while the community leaders responsible for creating the genetic disaster face zero accountability. Former community members describe a culture of denial where genetic disorders are blamed on divine punishment, outside interference, or individual family sins rather than acknowledging the obvious scientific reality. Parents are discouraged from seeking genetic counseling, and young people are forbidden from learning about heredity and genetics in their limited educational programs. The DNA evidence doesn't lie, and neither do the medical records. Polygamous communities are systematically destroying their own children's genetic future while sticking taxpayers with the medical bills. Follow the money trail of a successful polygamous family, and you'll discover a business empire that would make Fortune 500 CEOs jealous. These aren't struggling religious families scraping by on government assistance. They're sophisticated financial operators who've turned plural marriage into a wealth-generating machine worth millions of dollars. Let's dissect the financial anatomy of a typical high-level polygamous family. The husband legally owns nothing. His name appears on no major assets, no business registrations, no property deeds. He's deliberately made himself invisible to creditors, tax collectors, and investigators. But his 4 wives each own thriving businesses, multiple properties, and investment portfolios that collectively generate hundreds of thousands in annual income. Wife number 1 owns a successful catering business that services weddings and corporate events. Wife number 2 runs a boutique childcare center that caters to affluent suburban families. Wife number 3 operates a medical billing company serving multiple doctors' offices. Wife number 4 manages rental properties across 3 counties. Each business operates independently, but the profits flow back to support one massive household. The tax advantages are staggering. Each wife files business returns showing modest profits while claiming maximum deductions for home offices, business vehicles, travel expenses, and equipment purchases. The husband claims no income but benefits from spousal deductions, charitable contributions, and business losses. The family's collective tax burden is often less than what a single equivalent earner would pay. But the real genius lies in the credit multiplication. 4 wives mean 4 credit profiles, 4 business loan applications, 4 mortgage approvals, and 4 sets of investment opportunities. Property acquisitions that would be impossible for a single family become routine when spread across multiple legal identities. The Brown family's financial web perfectly illustrates this strategy. Public records show they've owned properties in Utah, Nevada, and Arizona simultaneously. Kody's legal name appears on virtually none of the major assets, while his wives have owned homes, started businesses, and accessed credit lines worth millions. The family's collective net worth far exceeds what their reported income should support. Religious-based businesses create another revenue stream entirely. Polygamous communities often operate construction companies, food service businesses, and manufacturing operations that employ community members at below-market wages while charging competitive rates to outside customers. The profit margins are enormous when your labor force works for religious devotion rather than fair wages. the international component adds another layer of financial sophistication. Many polygamous families maintain business interests and property holdings in Mexico, Canada, and Central America. These offshore assets provide tax advantages, regulatory flexibility, and safe havens if legal troubles arise in the United States. Former community members describe business meetings that resemble corporate board meetings more than religious gatherings. Financial planning, investment strategies, and tax optimization dominate the discussions, while spiritual matters take a distant backseat to profit margins and growth projections. These aren't religious communities anymore. They're business cartels using plural marriage as their competitive advantage in the American economy. Here's something that will blow your mind. While Americans debate whether polygamy should be legal, it's already perfectly legal in 58 countries around the world, and American polygamist families are quietly taking advantage of this global loophole to expand their operations internationally. The most sophisticated polygamous families don't just operate across state lines anymore, they operate across international borders, maintaining compounds, businesses, and multiple citizenships in countries where their lifestyle faces zero legal scrutiny. This isn't religious pilgrimage, this is strategic international business expansion. Mexico has become the preferred destination for American polygamist families seeking legal protection and operational flexibility. The fundamentalist Mormon colonies of Chihuahua and Sonora provinces house thousands of American polygamists who've relocated to escape U.S. law enforcement while maintaining their business interests north of the border. These aren't primitive religious settlements. They're modern communities with internet access, international banking, and cross-border commerce worth millions. The LeBaron family, featured in Netflix documentaries, represents just the tip of this international iceberg. For decades, they've operated ranches, manufacturing businesses, and agricultural operations that span both sides of the U.S.-Mexico border. Multiple wives provide multiple citizenship pathways, business registration opportunities, and legal protections that would be impossible for monogamous families. But Mexico is just the beginning. Canada's more liberal marriage laws have attracted polygamous families seeking legal recognition for their plural relationships. The bountiful community in British Columbia operates openly with minimal government interference, providing a safe haven for families fleeing U.S. prosecution. Recent legal challenges have actually strengthened their position, with Canadian courts ruling that prosecuting polygamy violates religious freedom protections. The Middle East and Africa present even more opportunities for American polygamist families with international ambitions. Countries like Egypt, Morocco, and Nigeria not only allow polygamy but provide legal frameworks that American families can exploit for citizenship, property ownership, and business operations. Former FLDS members describe recruitment trips to these countries designed to identify business opportunities and establish international networks. The financial advantages of international operations are staggering. U.S.-based polygamous families can shift assets offshore, establish businesses in low-tax jurisdictions, and access banking systems with greater privacy protections. Each wife's citizenship or residency in different countries multiplies these opportunities exponentially. European immigration patterns reveal another disturbing trend. Polygamous families from Muslim countries have successfully immigrated to France, Germany, and the UK, bringing their plural marriages with them. While these countries don't recognize polygamy domestically, they often acknowledge marriages performed in countries where they were legal. American polygamist families are studying these precedents to develop their own international strategies. The internet has transformed how these international networks communicate and coordinate. Encrypted messaging, secure financial platforms, and private social networks allow polygamous families scattered across multiple continents to maintain family connections, share resources, and coordinate business operations in real time. What started as isolated religious communities in the American West has evolved into a sophisticated international network, with operations spanning multiple countries, currencies, and legal systems. The polygamy underground is facing its biggest threat in over a century, and it's not coming from where you'd expect. It's not law enforcement raids or federal prosecutions. It's the next generation of polygamous children who are walking away from the lifestyle in unprecedented numbers, and they're taking the community's secrets with them. Social media has shattered the isolation that polygamous communities depend on for control. Young adults raised in plural families are connecting with the outside world, sharing their stories, and exposing the financial fraud and psychological manipulation that kept their parents trapped. The exodus is accelerating, and each person who leaves becomes a potential witness for federal investigators. Legal challenges are mounting from multiple directions. The Brown family's federal lawsuit challenging Utah's polygamy laws created legal precedents that cut both ways. While they won some religious freedom protections, they also established court records that make prosecution easier. Federal prosecutors now have documented evidence of how polygamous families operate, direct from the families themselves. The IRS has launched what insiders call Operation Plural Tax, a coordinated investigation into the tax fraud schemes that fund polygamous communities. cross-referencing databases, sharing information between states, and following digital financial trails that didn't exist 20 years ago. The old strategies of hiding income and manipulating benefits are becoming impossible to maintain. State governments are getting aggressive in ways that shock polygamous leaders. Utah passed legislation allowing prosecutors to charge polygamy as a simple infraction rather than a felony, removing the high burden of proof that protected families like the Browns. But the real power is in the accompanying fraud charges, child endangerment accusations, and civil asset forfeiture laws that can destroy polygamous families financially. Technology is the game changer that polygamist communities never saw coming. Digital financial records, social media surveillance, and data analysis tools give investigators capabilities that make the old cat-and-mouse games obsolete. Every online purchase, social media post, and digital transaction creates evidence trails that connect family members, document relationships, and prove fraud. The cultural shift in America toward accepting alternative family structures is creating unexpected problems for polygamous communities. As society becomes more tolerant of non-traditional relationships, the religious persecution narrative that protected polygamists from scrutiny is losing its power. Legal polygamy activists find themselves competing with advocates for gay marriage, polyamory, and other relationship structures that don't carry the baggage of financial fraud and child abuse. The most significant threat comes from within. Former polygamist children, now adults with college educations and mainstream careers, are providing law enforcement with insider knowledge that was impossible to obtain before. They understand the financial schemes, know the key players, and possess documentation that can unravel decades of carefully constructed fraud. Federal investigators predict that within the next decade, the current system of welfare fraud and tax evasion that funds modern polygamy will collapse under the weight of digital surveillance and insider testimony. The question isn't whether it will happen. The question is how many families will go down with it. The polygamy house of cards is crumbling, and the Brown family accidentally lit the match that started the fire. Every revelation we've uncovered today connects to a larger pattern of organized fraud that reaches into your tax dollars, your community schools, and possibly your own neighborhood. While Kody Brown plays the persecuted religious man on television, federal agencies are quietly building the cases that could take down the entire network. The welfare fraud schemes, international business operations, and genetic cover-ups represent just the beginning of what investigators are uncovering behind closed doors. The most chilling part? This investigation barely scratches the surface. Every document I've reviewed, every former community member I've researched, points to revelations that make today's bombshells look like appetizers before the main course. The next generation of polygamous children holds the key to exposing the full truth, and they're starting to talk. When that dam finally breaks, the flood of evidence will reshape how America views religious freedom, financial fraud, and family structures forever. Which bombshell hit you hardest? The $100 million in annual welfare fraud, the genetic disasters being covered up, or discovering your neighbors might be running plural families? And what do you think will ultimately bring this system crashing down? Federal prosecutions or the children finally speaking out? Let me know in the comments. Smash that like button. If this opened your eyes to what's really happening behind the Sister Wives cameras, hit subscribe to stay ahead of the investigations, and turn on notifications. Something tells me the next chapter in this story will make today's revelations look tame by comparison.